Chapter 34 The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. Today we bring you a review of Angie Thomas's 2017 award-winning debut novel, The Hate You Give. It's a book about racial discrimination in the US against African Americans. We start off this episode with a non-spoiler review of the novel where we tell you what to expect if you decide to read it, and talk about the movie adaptation starring Amanda Stenberg. For those of you who have read it, we'll be moving on to a deeper analysis talking about how rich with rounded characters, developed themes, as well as with hidden symbols this novel really is. Follow along for a very interesting review on our podcast. Turn the page. Welcome to a new chapter of Between the Pages. We are your hosts. I'm Nesma.
And this is Haneen.
We usually start off our chapters with a non-spoiler review of the book where we just tell you what the book is about, what to expect.
What we felt reading it.
Yeah, and then we move on into a spoiler review. So we basically just go into the plot, review the characters.
Story, quotes.
Yes, all of the goodies.
Yeah.
And today we have The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas.
Yes. Which was her first book. And she got 13 book awards, I think. and the book was adapted into a movie directed by George Tillman Jr. I don't think I saw any movies for him before, but yeah, the movie was great.
Well, I haven't watched the movie. I didn't have time to.
Yeah.
I barely even read the book.
Took you so long.
Yeah, it did. But anyway, now we're here and
finally.
we have a lot to say about this book.
Mm-hmm.
It is very, very I don't think controversial is the right word. It's very up to date with very intense problems that have been going on for centuries. And this is more of a modern perspective on it. Mm-hmm. So we have...
It's very in context. Regarding what happened last year and the year before. And every year there is some big incident with
stuff like this. So before we go into reviewing the novel in a non-spoiler way, let's summarize the plot a little so people know what we are talking about. Okay. So the novel has a main character. She's a girl. Her name is Star. Starr, which is a very unique
know what
way.
The extra R is for.
I don't know. And then, so she has an incident in her life. Is that a spoiler?
No. It's
okay, this is
at the back of the
this
book,
is on the cover. Okay,
her childhood best friend gets killed in front of her. She's a witness to that, and I guess that leads us to the main conflict of the book, whether to stand up for him and get justice or just stay quiet and move on and believe that these things happen. And
that is actually a very interesting that we will be talking about in the spoiler section. But so far, I think that this story is very maybe a little intense in sort of the events wise, because it's so real. I've seen things like that happen in real life. It's not just fiction. It's inspired by true events. Wow. Anyway, so we have incidents like that happening in real life and on social media, and I think this book is sort of a way to raise awareness around you and to learn when to speak up and when not to speak up.
It's a story of a girl finding her voice and getting out of her bubble, basically. And facing the consequences of that as well. And it's also a story about family. Like
Yes.
there's that
Very
strong
much
theme
so.
of family. Like family as in her parents, her siblings, her neighbors. They're all very present. Each and every one of them has their own character and personality in a way not found in like many books nowadays. Like or before, I guess. I don't know, like I feel like I've read a lot of books, but none of the parents had this much personality present in the story.
And impact as well.
And
Like
impact, yes.
in the like white culture,
Mm.
we have more not we, we're not part of that culture. We're in a completely different culture.
Yeah.
We're the Middle Eastern culture.
I think not even the Middle Eastern.
No.
Like we don't go there as well. Where are we on the map of minorities? I think we're in between, you know.
So let's
we're
just
neither
specify.
white nor black.
Yeah,
you know?
like we're Egyptian.
We're North Africans, let's say.
Sort of, yeah.
Okay,
Okay, anyway, let's just get
you know
back
what?
to the point.
You know what? Putting labels on groups of people is so frustrating. It's what got us here in the first place.
Yeah,
Basically.
exactly.
In a nutshell.
But what I wanted to say was that in the normal community, apart from the black community, we have like children rebelling against their parents, and then like once they turn 18, like I'm moving out and I'm doing my own thing. But in the black community, like we can identify with it a little bit more because they are very family oriented,
Yes.
just like our culture.
And community oriented as well.
Yes, very
Yeah.
community oriented, and I loved that. You know, the unity of it. Like no one's alone. The way that Star could process the incident so well is because of her parents. Yes, she has trauma. Like any
Of
person would
course,
have
yeah.
trauma in a
Would
moment
see
like that in their
yes,
life.
Yeah.
But I really liked the support system that she had around her.
And that was very emphasized by how she, you would know that early on in the book, by how she has like different personality, even in the first chapter. Yeah, that like she has different ways of behaving in like the white community versus the black community, and that put emphasis on like the theme of family and community in the book. And
Yeah.
yeah. Like, I mean, there is not very much to spoil in this book because, like, while reading it, you know it's going in a certain direction. Like, I didn't feel surprised. I didn't feel
No. I did feel some sort of what's gonna happen in terms of what is gonna be Star's decision in this matter. You know, I was imagining what kind of story will this be? Will this be a story where she stands up for herself and
her friend,
her friend, or is this a story because again, an author can make a certain decision in a way. I'm not gonna say which one is the ending in the book. I'm just gonna give you both options of things that could happen when you like feelings that might be evoked when you start reading the book. So I had two endings in mind. The first ending was that Star would be oppressed by the community around her, and it sort of would be a bad ending, like a negative ending, and that also in itself is a statement. Like Angie Thomas would be showing, look what you've done to her. Look how bad it has gotten that she is in this situation.
Yes.
The other ending that we have is that she stands up for herself, and which is sort of like the fictional part of it and she finds justice at the end, you know?
Yeah.
So you have two options in front of you. Both of them make the same statement. So I was wondering where
what the journey would be like.
Yeah, what the
basically.
journey
Yeah.
would be like and where we would end up at.
I think it's the journey of a person struggling with a normalized event, like and which simply should not be. And her grappling with that and trying to find her place or the right thing to do about it. And that was, like we said, intense.
Yeah.
And scary. I can't imagine myself in her place at all. And
it's very tough. It's really tough. Like, I can't even imagine something like that happening in real life to someone. You know, this is very hard to grasp, and I think it's not supposed to be easily grasped. You know, it's supposed to be experienced to fully understand, because again, who can identify with this book the most? The Black community.
Yes.
Because they experience things
that
like this
every day, and the book makes it so real, which left me, like, by the end of the book feeling frustrated by the absurdity, like, of the present backwardness of human beings. Like, after all these centuries, you still do this to each other. We still do this to each other. We still think like that. We still hate. We still don't understand each other. When are we going to learn that we are different groups of people?
That we are all humans.
Yes, that we are humans of different groups of people, so we can evolve, basically. Like, I guess there is this verse in Quran that we have. It says, I'm gonna say that in Arabic, I don't know it in English. وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا.
Which roughly translates to
and we are made into different peoples for a reason, like to know each other and to learn from each other and to evolve together. And
you know, since I was very young, like I've never even realized that racism was a problem. Like, till very later on did I realize that there is racism in Egypt, in our community.
There is.
I've never noticed it before, just because it never crosses my mind. Like, not because I'm naive, just because I don't see it. When I've had a conversation with our friend Salma, and I was debating with her that the Egyptian culture or Egyptian people are generally not that racist, but apparently they are. I've never noticed it, because I've had Black friends growing up. And I've never had a problem with them before.
Me too, yes.
Like, I would not... This thought would even cross my mind. I mean, children they don't see it. They don't see the difference. And then growing up, when you don't see it yourself, you don't think it's present. But it is present. Like, maybe my friend from, like, 4th or 5th grade, maybe she experienced something that I wasn't aware of, you know?
Definitely.
So... I wouldn't be able to grasp this idea of, like, why would they do that? You know?
Exactly. Why? Like, is it a matter of religion? Like, in different religions, racism is not, like, sort of taught that we shouldn't be racist, especially by that verse I quoted. Or is it a matter of history? Is it a matter of culture? Like, or just people don't like different people? Like, I mean, okay, so supposedly in Islam we shouldn't be racist, okay? But, like, I remember my Saudi relative, like, she lived here in Egypt for a while during, like, college, and so she got the Egyptian dialect.
Yeah.
And she was talking to her friend there when she just got back in Saudi Arabia, waiting in the line to pay for something in a store, and she spoke in Egyptian. And, like, another Saudi person was like, go at the back of the line, like, I should be first, as in
I'm better than you.
Yeah. And funny thing, they are both Saudi Arabians, you know.
And just because she spoke with an Egyptian dialect, they think she's Egyptian. So.
Yes, and and they have a lot of people from different ethnicities, and apparently.
Yeah. No, I
here
think
as well. I've seen, which is frustrating.
It's mind blowing, but again, I think the Black community suffers the most in America because of the whole background with slavery and the origin of it all. Like, where did it come from? Why are they looked down upon? But again, I don't think this is a present thought that people have these days. Like, oh, you were slaves back then, so I'm going to treat you badly. I don't think this is how it works.
Yeah, I don't think it goes this way. But now it's with stereotypes.
Yes.
And, like, the media image of them. And
Yeah. Which brings us to, we're just going to drop a few facts on you. The stereotypes that we have. Some of you are not aware of that. Like in literature, we have, when we study African American literature or African American identity, we have certain stereotypes that we work with and then identified throughout the text. And we found some of them, or I've noted down some of them that are pretty present in The Hate U Give. So, for example, we have African Americans being categorized in the lower class and not being able to provide for themselves. That's why we have like places like the Hood and what was it called again?
Garden Heights.
Garden Heights. Sorry, Garden Heights. That's where they were living, right?
Yes.
And then we have African Americans are unintelligent, lazy, violent, and criminals affecting educational outcomes, employment opportunities, and dismantling of African American families and communities. So this is like how people see them, you know, as unintelligent and incapable, basically. And which is not true. These are only stereotypes. They might apply to some cases, but
they apply
it's
to
not
some
the
cases
general.
On both sides.
Yes.
Like, I mean, there are unintelligent, lazy, and like, what else did you say?
A lot of things.
And all of this, and the white people, like.
And what about the white people? Exactly. And then there was one study made in the category of stereotypes in education, where the behaviors of African male students were more harshly perceived than behavior of ethnic groups, if evidenced by, oh my god, what? Disproportionately in suspension rates and other types of school discipline. This is likely due to the stereotypes of African American males are aggressive. Okay. Coming from what? Where does this aggression come from? So they made a questionnaire with teachers from white communities. The existing research suggests that teachers' stereotypes influence their implicit bias. So the teacher has a bias or a stereotype in mind, and this inflicts the hate in the Black people. So this is where the hate comes from, basically, which mirror those biases of the general population. For instance, 136 teachers from 6 schools were asked to watch a video of students walking. The results showed that the teachers perceived the African American male students walking with a stroll, which is a popular cultural style of walking displayed by many African American males, to be more aggressive, lower in achievement, and more likely to need special education. Like, on what terms?
It really is absurd. Like, what?
Yeah, I don't know. And this is like related to some of the things that are present in the book, because there is a question that is being asked by one of the characters. Not a question, a statement. That is the hate they give us. I'm not going to elaborate too much on that, because we still want you to read the book and to find out what the title actually means, The Hate U Give, which is a very interesting thing to find out as along the journey of reading the book. Because when I first read the title, I was like, what does that mean, The Hate U Give?
Okay, I guess we can jump into the spoiler. Where we like talk about themes, stereotypes, symbols present in The Hate U Give.
Yeah.
With much more detail, we can actually like refer to a certain event and not like spoil things for the listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So, spoilers are coming.
Fair warning.
But I really don't think that like spoilers would affect them while reading the book. I don't know.
Well, it's a freedom of choice. They can choose if they want the spoilers or not. Some people don't like it. So I think one of the things that I wanted to start with was the quote اللي هي feel free to tell me if you want to start somewhere else.
Okay.
When the Khalils get arrested for selling drugs.
Okay, قولي الline من الأول عشان you were talking really slowly.
Oh, okay. Alright, so the quote that I wanted to start with in the spoiler part was when the Khalils get arrested for selling drugs, they either spend most of their life in prison, another billion-dollar industry, or they have a hard time getting a real job and probably start selling drugs again. That's the hate they're giving us, baby. A system designed against us. That's thug life.
I found the part where they were talking about this in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Loa, the hate you give little infants F's everybody. Thug life. But it's the part where her father was discussing it with her, not when Khalil was telling her about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like from the quote you just read, it means that they are basically in a rut that they can't get out of because the system is designed against them. It puts them back in that rut every time they try to climb out from it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even making them their ambition is to just like put food on the table, live in a nice place. So they're even making them more on in that level. Like they can't make them back in a higher place, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They can't not make them, but they, you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
I don't know why I can't. I'm not putting it into words.
I'm actually getting your point. Yes.
Yeah.
I think I'll help you out.
Yes, please.
So I think the system, basically, we're talking about America here, not about any other place.
Mm-hmm.
So the system against them is I'm hitting a wall.
Like they are not going to be lawyers or doctors or like very rich businessmen, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Not easily. And they can't think.
They need to fight for it. Like
yes.
They really need to fight for it.
Exactly. And they're making it harder. Like if they are fallen in that rut where they sell drugs or like have violent acts, so they can't achieve these things because they maybe have a record of an incident.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they're always in that loop that can't get out of it. And okay, like during that discussion, Maverick said something that was like very enlightening كده, other than all the things that he just said. But here it says طب مش شرط نباز بس let's read this part هيرتب دماغنا أكتر. تعالي نقول من أول هنا. Khalil said it's about what society feeds us as youth and how it comes back and bites them later. I think it's about more than youth, though. I think it's about us, period. Us who? Black people, minorities, poor people, everybody at the bottom in society, the oppressed, says Daddy. Yeah, we're the ones who get the short end of the stick, but we're the ones they fear the most. That's why the government targeted the Black Panthers, right? Because they were scared of the Panthers? Daddy says. The Panthers educated and empowered the people. The tactic of empowering the oppressed goes even further back than the Panthers, though. Name one. Okay, the Slave Rebellion in 1831. Nat Turner empowered and educated other slaves, and it led to one of the biggest slave revolts in history. So basically, if they are like, if they have time and the resources to just focus on education, they can
They
be
can
just
do
like the rest
everything.
of the Americans, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the hate they're giving the little infants in today's society? Racism? Okay, you gotta get a little more detailed than that. Think about Khalil and his whole situation before he died. He was a drug dealer, it hurts to say that, and possibly a gang member. Why was he a drug dealer? Why are so many people in our neighborhood drug dealers? I remember what Khalil said. He got tired of choosing between lights and food.
Mm.
They need money, I say, and they don't have a lot of other ways to get it. Right, lack of opportunities. Daddy says, corporate America don't bring jobs to our community, and they damn sure ain't quick to hire us. Then, shit, even if you do have a high school diploma, so many of the schools in our neighborhood don't prepare us well enough. That's why when your mama talked about sending you and your brothers to Williamson, I agreed. Our schools don't get the resources to equip you like Williamson does. It's easier to find some crack than it's to find a good school around here. Now,
Sad
think about
truth.
this. How did the drugs even get in our neighborhood? This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. We're talking about, baby. That shit is flown into our communities, but I don't know anybody with a private jet, do you? Yes, that's the part. That's what I was looking for. I mean, okay, they're selling drugs, they're gang members, they need the money and they get a lot of it, but they are not rich. They're still not rich. And then they go into prison and get out with even less opportunities than they were before.
Because they have a track record.
Yes. So like that what got my attention. I mean, do you see anyone with a private jet? But
Well,
yes.
like when I researched a little bit more about the African American males in America, I was surprised to see the numbers. I was mind blown. So, for example, the Justice Policy Institute found that 52% of African American males who did not graduate high school had a prison record by the time they were 30. That was Bethel 2012.
Okay, so let's translate this into real life. They did not graduate high school, so they did not go to college. They didn't have a real job that pays like their livelihoods, so they turned into crime.
Yeah.
And then they went to prison, and then they're
Exactly.
never getting out of their life because like who would hire someone who was in prison?
Yeah.
Okay, and
then we have a second point, which is African Americans are incarcerated 5 times more than Caucasians and are 2.5 times more likely to population. African American men account for 34% of drug arrests and 40% of the total prison population.
wow.
40% of the prison population.
So, and they aren't even a big percentage in the population of America.
In general. So
Yes.
they're 12% in general of the US population.
And 40% of those 12% are in prison. I mean, come on.
And it is estimated that 1 in every 3 African American men born today will be imprisoned sometime during their lifetime. This is terrible.
And who is the reason for that? There's the society.
The society.
Or the government.
Or the justice system,
Yes.
basically. The law.
And the culture and everything. Everything is designed against them there. I mean,
And
they are Americans.
that there is no accountability. Yani, when, for example, if a cop shows up and arrests a black male, there is no actual procedure that goes through where they find this person guilty or not, you know? Maybe it's maybe they run a few procedures just to...
But loosely, you know?
Loosely,
Or what
not
we
really.
yeah.
There's no one is having their back, basically. No one is standing up for them except for the blacks themselves. So a black will stand up for another black guy. And that is not enough. It's not enough.
You know, there is this point that was stressed on more in the movie, I think, than in the book, in a conversation between Star and her uncle Carlos.
Yeah.
she was like, would you have to pull the trigger? Like, he was explaining the mindset of a cop at that
procedure.
moment.
Yeah.
And she told him, what if he why didn't he tell him, show me your hands, or raise your hand, or
why did
that
he shoot
weapon,
immediately?
or yes, instead of shooting directly. He told her, I'm like, he might have shot him as well. And then she told him, what if it was a white guy? Would you have asked him first what was in his hand? I'm like, I'm quoting what I remember. I don't like. Not
It's
word
okay.
for
It's
word.
okay.
But like, you get the meaning. Even an African American cop,
will suspect his own kind.
Yes, more than
a Caucasian
suspecting
male.
a white person. And that's because the part where you said about the teachers in
exactly,
even African Americans, they doubt themselves. They're raised to doubt their instincts,
their own community,
or their own community,
because they know that some of them are drug dealers and have guns on them. Yes. Just because, okay, the ideas of, again, why do they have guns on them? Because they feel like they need to protect themselves.
Yes.
From what? And again, we're back to the same point. But what I wanted to address is that in no way do I want to justify what the cop did. But I want to see what happened from his perspective. So there was literally, before you came to record this episode, I was watching a TED Talk about a mother talking about a homicidal suicidal murder, a mass shooting in a school. So her son was a mass shooter in a school, and she is the mother of that 17-year-old boy. He was 17, so he was suffering from depression, and he had suicidal thoughts, and he killed 13 students and injured other 20 students as well, and teachers along that as well. So again, what goes through the head of a person like that, you know? Again, apart from that, but I want to go back to the cop who did something in that scenario. There must have been a reason. And this is again related to the stereotypes of the Black community.
Rooted in him.
He might have been too afraid to the point where logic completely left his mind, where he was forgetting about procedure, the steps he has to take before he shoots the gun.
Yes.
Because there's protocol, okay? He has to even write a report when he shoots the gun. This is what a cop has to do. They have to write a report of why he shot the gun, okay? Again, why would he write a report where he would look like he's guilty? You know?
Yeah.
In his place,
3 shots, did his mind leave him, an instinct took hold based on the rooted beliefs or stereotypes he was raised with, to fire 3 consecutive shots. Wow. He could have just maybe injured him.
Shot at his in arm, his leg, or in anything
where he can defend himself, not. Wow.
Yeah. And I think what differentiates him from an actual cop and a ruthless person is the fact that he did kill him. I think I don't know what the actual procedures are, but I'm aware that a cop should have, first of all, reasons to shoot the gun, valid reason to shoot the gun, to make sure that the person who he is shooting at is actually a threat.
Yes.
Okay. And I think in that moment he wasn't aware of the fact that he's shooting at a real person. So yeah, this just brings us back to the stereotypes of the Black community, and that this is the rooted problem of we need to fix the way people view the Black community. But this is also not just the the job of the white community, but also of the black community. I know that they have disadvantages and they don't have as many opportunities, and they speak differently than us. They dress differently than us. They have a certain type of, I don't want to say language in terms of words, but I want to say language, like not a language where they speak, but a language in connected by art and fashion and food, and you know what I mean, like things
Yes.
that the white community will never understand.
Or some of them do, like Chris.
Yeah, some of them do. Like he can understand it, but he can't be part of it. You know what I mean? Like this is something that only the black community gets to have. Okay?
Yes.
And just because we look at it from the outside doesn't mean that they are worse than us or that we are better than them. You know? Because again, the African Americans make up only 12% of the US population. So again, the whites think that they are the majority, so they should be they should be more like us.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Okay, that's a perspective. Yeah.
So,
but I mean, why can't we just accept difference?
exactly.
Like, otherwise we'd all be the same and life would be boring. Like, why would we travel to experience Europe, for example? And why would Europe or like Americans come to Egypt to see our history, our ancient history, and what we...
Some people actually believe that we live in pyramids.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And others think we still commute on camels, so...
I mean, we are more educated than that. We can confirm it. We have cars and houses and everything.
And not like back to Garden Heights. Not also do they are poor and like turn to crime or like drug dealing because they need to eat, but because they need like the thug life gives them a sense of like someone is having your back, someone is asking about you, someone is there for you. And that was explained by Devante, the person who came to ask Maverick to help him to leave the King Lords. He was explaining to Star that and like she was asking him why wasn't he with his family, and like so he was like, they couldn't look out for us like King Lords do, he says. Me and Dalvin looked out for them. With King Lords, we had a whole bunch of folks who had our backs, no matter what. They bought us clothes and shit our mama couldn't afford, and always made sure we ate. And stuff our mama couldn't afford, and always made sure we ate. He looks at the counter. It was just cool to have somebody take care of us for a change instead of the other way around. And this also explains the pressure put on teenagers, basically, to fend for themselves and take care of the adults in the family. Because the adults don't have jobs that can pay for the teenagers' needs.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's a cycle. And yeah, so...
You know, one of the interesting points was, I know that some of you might not have heard of it, but when I studied literature in college, I came across one of the plays by Lorraine Hansberry. She wrote A Raisin in the Sun. And there were some similarities between the play and this novel, but what I want to focus on was a character in the play A Raisin in the Sun. Her name was Mama. Just Mama. In the play, she had the dream to purchase a house with a backyard to fulfill her dream for her family to move up in the world, and this is in comparison with the character Lisa Carter in The Hate You Give. The mother of Star, who also wanted to move out of the neighborhood to give her children a better and safer life. But in the play, there was a present discussion of whether or not they will actually find the peace they are looking for simply by moving into a white, more prestigious neighborhood. And I wanted to talk about this as well. Like, what do you think about this? Do you think that moving up to a more prestigious neighborhood, and we're talking about like a very big time difference, okay? So this was in the, I didn't write this down, but I'm assuming this was in the 1850s.
Okay.
No, that's way too back. 1950s.
Oh, 1850s, and I'm like,
Sorry.
fine, you know?
Yeah, sure. 1850s, okay? Where there weren't any cars yet. The play was in the 1850s. Feel free to correct me on that if anyone is listening and they know about the play. And we're talking about The Hate You Give, which takes place in what time?
2017, 18.
Yeah. So we have, of course, a little bit of difference, like, but again, we still have the same problem.
Yes.
You know, look at the time difference. Like, how many years?
Nearly
is that?
100.
Yeah.
Yeah. 70
almost.
years.
Almost.
Yeah.
So it's apparent, or it could be that even if they move up into a more prestigious neighborhood, that they will still have problems. Like, what if their neighbors are racist? Like, what if they're like picket fence, American dream type of family, and they have a very traditional mindset?
Yeah.
Or they could have open-minded people.
But they were leaving the King Lords behind. They were not, as in they're not their problem anymore, but they are like, the bullets flew into their house once or twice during the book. I mean, I get why she wants to get out of there.
Yeah.
But they will be facing another problem, let's say.
Yeah. That's exactly how the play ended as well. With them moving to the new house.
Really?
And then it's over.
Wow.
Again, so they had all these issues with like racist neighbors and I don't know, whatever. Like, I don't remember the exact details of the play. And we're not going to get into that because that's just going to be a waste of time. But there were, they had both of them had the same ending where they both move into a more prestigious neighborhood. So, and they were warned not to in the play. They had like other black people warning them or telling them, don't go, you won't find what you're looking for there, and you're just chasing an American dream that doesn't exist for black people. And yeah.
Sigh. But I mean,
sigh.
this brings me back to the point of, are we still there? Like, why?
Yeah, obviously. Like, for example, we have the theme of identity and blackness in The Hate You Give. We have things like...
it is a strong theme, especially with the parents.
So we have
And
Black
Star.
World.
Yeah.
Black World of Garden Heights versus White World of Williamson Prep. And we have her as well. Like, if we're talking about identity specifically, we have a Star where she switches her speech, mannerisms, and behaviors to fit into Williamson Prep. Yeah.
Wow.
But again, I wanted to say something about that. I don't think this is necessarily only applies to black people, because we all have different identities throughout our lives. We carry different identities for our family, our friends, our colleagues at work, and for children, for grown-ups, for elderly people. We all have a different mannerism.
It's a human thing, yes.
Yeah, it's more of a human thing than a black identity thing, but it is part of it a little, because it's part of identity. Okay? Then we have...
then emphasizes how, or puts emphasis on how she behaves in her community.
Yeah.
Which brings out their identity. Like,
exactly.
of their slang, their like rap thing. Yeah.
There was an interesting part when I was researching about the theme, which I very liked. I wanted us to discuss this. We have Star's identity conflict is evident in her father figures. So she has two, Maverick and Uncle Carlos, who have different perspective on authentic blackness.
Yes.
So the constant argument between Maverick and Uncle Carlos
No, what makes them black enough?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, what makes you man enough? No, but what makes you black enough?
So the constant arguments between Maverick and Uncle Carlos highlight how difficult it is for Star to reconcile her two worlds and find a way to honor her whole self. So we have Maverick, who draws inspiration from the Black Power movement and believes in self-reliant blackness that uses existing structures within black neighborhoods to improve conditions.
Yes.
And then we have
Uncle
Carlos
with his neighbor shop.
Yes,
Mr. Lewis,
and picking up Devante.
Yes,
like taking him under his wing and
to help him, and the gang system as well.
Yeah,
in the community and and then Uncle Carlos with like his job as a police officer and his house in a gated community, which was like emphasized on many times in the book.
Many times.
Like it's a thing. And like represents assimilation into white culture and what? Okay. With that, and that Uncle Carlos believes that he can support black communities by using white organizations like the police force to combat gang violence. While on the other hand, Maverick believes that he should stay in Garden Heights and like help black people by like their systems as well of like standing up for each other and
yeah. I think that the reason, or that these two male figures in her life are the main reason why she has this conflict of whether or not to talk about Khalil's death and to speak up about it, because they both have very different point of views. Like even at the very beginning of the novel, we have Maverick and Uncle Carlos having a debate right in front of her about whether she should go to court or not. Like,
yeah, true.
Be a little bit more subtle. Like the poor girl is suffering. She just woke up from a nap and her head might not still be like processing a few things, and they're already discussing
what she should do.
And then you have the mom interfering, and
and like having them in stark difference. Like Maverick went to prison and was a gang member, and Uncle Carlos is a cop. Like having them on opposite ends. I really like the contrast to emphasis theme that is going on with the book. And like with Chris and Devante as well. Like having Chris be like loving the black community and like behaving like them in a way, and like it was actually funny throughout the book. I love that it was a light thing in the novel, you know, and like them testing him and like, are you black enough, you know?
I love that part.
I remember that part, yes, where
with the mac and cheese where he failed the test.
Where is it a main dish or a side dish?
A side dish or a meal?
Or a meal. And the
he
part
said
where
meal. I would have said meal too.
I mean, it's an appetizer. I don't know.
It's macarona.
Yeah. Anyway, and there was this part where they were like, what's up with like white people when they're in a difficult situation, they split up.
Why is it always when they split up people die?
Yeah. And then Chris suggesting 5 minutes later that they should split up when they like the protests were happening.
Yeah. It's like, shut up, Chris.
And the confrontation with Haley in that minority alliance with Maya. It draws the attention towards that racism is toward minorities and not like. But I still believe that it goes both ways. I mean, how many times did Devante call Chris white, and like that his behavior is so white, and like it goes both ways. Anyway, but like the idea of racism, like Star had this thought here she said that that's the problem. We let people say stuff, and they say it so much that it becomes okay to them and normal for us.
I remember that.
Uh-huh. What's the point of having a voice if you're going to be silent in those moments you shouldn't be?
Yeah.
And yes, and that takes us back to stereotypes.
Again. But I think okay, you reminded me of another moment with Haley. So I remembered that something I wasn't aware of, actually. That even when you say something racist and you didn't mean it in that way, that it's still racist. You know?
But that's the point. They say it enough, and it's okay for them and normal for us. Like,
yeah.
So it's okay for her point of view is that it's okay. Like, people say this stuff,
Yeah.
I'm not being
like
racist.
I didn't mean it that way,
yeah.
but I said it anyway. Like, okay, then just watch what you say. But again, why, like you said, when you say a black person tells a white person what you're doing is so white.
Like,
again,
duh.
where to draw the line?
Yes. And like with stereotypes and the hate you give, it was the emphasis they put on Khalil being a drug dealer on the news, Haley being racist because of stereotypes. Like, she said stereotypical things. Like, I remember what she said to Maya about eating fish at eating cats on Thanksgiving or something. Apparently it's racist to Asians, and I don't know the stereotype.
Yeah, it is racist. Yeah.
But I got that it was racist, and
you wouldn't even think of saying something like that. You barely open social media to know anything.
Yeah.
Which makes you the least racist person on earth. You're not exposed to any slang to even use it.
Exactly. I mean, there was this point. 115 defends his murder of Khalil. 115 has no reason to think Khalil's hairbrush is actually a gun, other than 115's presumption that Khalil is violent because he is black. So again, what made him shoot is the feeling of being threatened because of the stereotype of black people being violent. Yeah.
But again, I want to ask as well, why did Khalil move even though the cop told him not to?
Which brings us back to the talk. I mean, the talk. Why?
Yeah.
Why do they have to live through that? Like, to tell their children what to do when a cop stops them.
Stops you.
Like, I didn't know it was a thing, and it was an eye opener to me.
Yeah.
Like,
so the first time that I came across this talk, air quotations, was when I was watching Grey's Anatomy, and there was a moment in the show where Bailey was talking to her son about... Yeah, okay, so like the Grey's Anatomy show basically revolves around cases that they have throughout the day, and these cases reflect on their daily lives. Like something happened in her with her patient, and that triggered in her something. Of course, I have been out of the loop a little, so I don't remember the episode that much. So I'm just going to talk about what is important, which is the moment where she felt like it's time to talk about that with her son. So what to do when a cop stops you. You enunciate, first of all. Like, you don't talk any gang talk or
just like how stars speaks at school. Yeah.
Just talk. I don't want to say normal because, again, I don't want to be racist. Talk normal. Nope. What is normal even?
Like, basically, talk like white people.
Talk like white people.
When a cop stops you.
Yeah, talk like white people. So, and then always keep your hands where they can see them so they don't feel threatened. But I tell you, even when they do that, they still can get shot. even when they do all the things they're supposed to do.
Yes.
There is still a risk of being shot. That's why the talk is sometimes not really effective, but still, like, kids should be aware of it, and which is sad because at such a young age, why should be kids be afraid of something like that? And by the way, we talked about this before we recorded a couple days ago, about how this relates to the Palestinians and the Jews.
Yeah. No,
with Israel.
Israel's, not the Jews, because it's basically the government, more like.
Yeah, it is the government.
And of course, I have to believe that like Israel's are like normal people are racist toward Palestine and vice versa, of course. Like Palestinians like don't like the Israels because like they occupied their country basically.
Yeah.
And the others like just
want them gone, basically.
No, the others are, yes, of course, other than wanting them gone, they are like the normal people, not the government. It is instilled in them that like they are better than the Palestinians, so that builds up the racism.
Yeah.
But I mean, what's happening right now is an atrocity, and it has been happening for, I think, 70 years. Like, I remember, I think all this started after World War II.
Yes.
So, like, in the year 48.
It is all because of Hitler.
Yes, the year 48.
To think of it, he started all of this.
True.
Even when he's dead, he still causes trouble.
And so, how many years is that? Well, let me calculate. 2021 minus 1948. That's 73 years.
Wow.
73 years.
And I've been only alive of 23 of those.
Yeah.
Like, this has been happening for a very long time. And I think as well, like, I wanted to refer to something that Haley did in the story. She unfollowed Star when she started posting
about like incidents with,
which is exactly the problem. This is what is the solution to stereotypes and racism? Being aware of the problem, seeing things for what they really are, and really what is happening in your community, and educating yourself on what the Black community actually represents. Okay, again, we don't want to believe in stereotypes, even if they can be true sometimes. Okay, stereotypes come from a certain place.
Yes, they are based on something, of course. But like,
yes, but they are not the majority. Never the majority. And I think this is also related to the Palestinians and the Jews at the moment. People who are ignorant, don't educate themselves, don't see the situation for what it truly is. For example, you have so many people siding with the Jews and say, no, this is their land and the مش عارفة إيه, and they don't educate themselves on how did they get this land in the first place.
True.
Where the Jews were never always there. They started at a certain point and made it Israel. It was never Israel to begin with.
Yeah, it's not a matter of Jews living in Palestine since forever or in Egypt or whatever. It's a matter of when did the Israel government form.
Exactly.
And that's when the occupation happened. It's the government, not the people who follow a religion. It's not about them, it's about the government.
Yeah. And this is exactly what relates as well to the Black community. It's again not turning a blind eye and not believing in what everybody thinks. Yeah, I think I've made my point.
Yeah, you have. I think I really want to talk about the characters.
Yeah.
As in, like, Devante for me is the embodiment of the hate you give. The still living embodiment of it. Like, I mean, Khalil died. He's the one who things can get better for him. Like,
yes.
He's the one who got out of the rut, you know, or getting out of it. And I think that presented a sense of a ray of hope in the story, despite, like, people not, the court not, what's it called? Not evicting. Like, إنه ما عاقبوا اسمه إيه ده? They
punishing?
Not punishing. Like, not be the court not, like, being in favor of Khalil, but in favor of 115.
Okay. Is there a term for that?
Yes.
I forgot.
There is a legal term of... I can't bring it. Anyway, you get my point. Like, Devante is the ray of sunshine in the story where, like, things can get better for the youth or the Black community if they stand up with each other without, like, turning to crime. And again, like, I don't believe it was an easy choice for them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Like, being criminals or, like, gangs.
And the thing is that I think in Devante's case as well, that his community turned against him. So the people he was working with in the drug area, when he decided to drop out, he's like, no, that's not how it works.
Yes.
You still owe us, or you belong to us. It's like, so it's this thing as well, like, where they don't only fight the white, they fight themselves. Yeah, they fight themselves, which is, this is so tough. It's really tough.
Yes, while Khalil died, so there are these opposites of the same situation where one got out and the other didn't.
Yes.
And the one that got out is because of the Mavericks and the Carlos and the Lisas in the community. Maverick and Lisa, they are another thing. Like, I really love them as, like, parental figures.
Yeah.
Like, I love them. I keep saying this is the first time I come across parent characters that are actually, like, a big part of the story. Like, you know, their beliefs, their personalities, like how, for example, Lisa breaks down a name if she's really, really angry with them, and then, like, they can't get away with what they've done, or like how Maverick makes Star think and talk and, like, discuss an issue with him, like the way he makes her break it down, so like she grasps the issue, and like, they are really present in the story, and I love that. So yes, what else? There are also, we wanted to talk about symbols.
Symbols, yes. So we have, of course, the first symbol we have 115. We have why is he called 115 throughout the book? I think this is a pretty obvious one, but
well, we like what we found on that website. Yeah.
And it was 115 is a statistic, a part of a violent system, and his name and story do not change the fact that he wrongfully killed Khalil. So I think as well, if we would have given him a name, we would have seen him as a person and not as the issue or the problem. So
yes,
they're basically saying he's one of many.
Yeah.
Okay. He's not the problem.
All the white cops who wrongfully murdered black kids. Yeah.
Exactly. Which is why I always think that when something like this happens and when it tips the scale, you know, when somebody is killed and it turns into a revolution or protest, I think this person didn't die in vain. And again, they stand for something more than their death. They are basically changed into a metaphor. You know, they stand not just for their own death, but the death of all Black people.
The ones before them and the ones that would come.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
And it's sad that it only takes moments like that to raise awareness. Like somebody has to die in order for people to be sympathetic or to be aware of the issue. And to think about this is very sad, you know?
So another symbol was Maverick's roses.
Maverick's
roses. Which I should say is like there is another book after The Hate You Give that goes back to Maverick's story. It's called Concrete Rose, yes. Which makes sense that like the author may have chosen roses for Maverick's garden as a reference to Tupac's poem The Rose That Grew from Concrete, hence the title of the second book.
Yeah.
Which is widely interpreted as celebrating success of poor Black children who grow up with very few resources. Which is seen like in Devante and his children. Like, I mean, at the end of the book, when he said that like his roses will survive the move, meaning that the values he put in his children will survive even when they're not in the sight of like what's happening. I mean, you know what I mean? So even though they're not present in the problems of Garden Heights, they still have these values of like standing up for their people and Black pride and everything. And like at the point in the story, the roses were dying, reflecting Star's like dilemma of whether to
I mean, I love that as not. Well.
Yeah. And I love that also like the Miss Afra kept telling Star that her voice is her weapon. Fighting, like, so a voice versus the gun of the officer. And a hairbrush. I mean, like that protest was like, that was said, a hairbrush is not a gun, was like an arrow to my heart. Oh my god, it's so sad. Okay, I guess this is all we have to say. I'm sure there are some things that we didn't say and we'll remember later and regret. But this has been an interesting book that is an eye-opener to a very current situation that is regrettable.
Definitely.
So yeah, I guess we'll see you next month.
Where we review
Shadow and Bone. I mean, we love adaptations.
Clearly.
Clearly. Look how many adapted books we have reviewed. Thank you for making it till the end of this chapter. Tune in for Shadow and Bone by Lee Bardugo on Between the Pages, Wednesday, 28th of July. Mark the page for chapter 35.